and I'll be able to log you here. And you can provide. Okay, so I'll be making public, call for public comment under general public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to make general comment for items not on the agenda? If you are in the room, please fill out a speaker card and deliver it to me. If you are joining via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature on the bottom of the screen or next to your name. And if you're joining via phone, press *9 now. I have one public comment card for someone in the room. Do we have any hand raised online? I don't see any. And I don't see any phone numbers that joined either. So we can start with our first public commenter, Pam D. Jones.
I'm Pam D. Jones, resident of Menlo Park, Bellhaven neighborhood. I'm really happy to be here in person so that I can meet you all, or re-meet you all, however that is. I wanted to start with that I do not represent any organization. The words that I say are my words. And I just want to be clear on that one. I also came and wanted to say in public that the comments that I made at the city council meeting are more about process. It had nothing to do with the organizations, the work that you all are doing. It was purely a process piece. And one of the issues that I did bring up that looks like it is well covered in one of the documents that you're doing this evening. So I was really excited to see that. And that was the one on inspection. I also wanted to thank Commissioner Eduardo. I was going to butcher your last name.
Oh, yeah.
And then 7 months ago, you did a substantial amount of work on the Hetch Hetchy easement because we've lost a lot of land because we can't put anything on top of it. So I wanted you to know that work is not forgotten. It's just one of those items, excuse me, that we haven't gotten to. Okay, but there are a couple of us that are moving forward on it. So I just wanted to make sure that I thanked you for that one. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Any other?
No, that concludes our public comment.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item D, regular business. Our first item is D1, which is approving the March 2024 EQC meeting minutes. Any clarifying questions from the commission before taking public comment? All right. Ms. Launder, do we have any public comment for this item?
Oh, well, let me ask. Are there any members of the public who would like to make general comment for item D? If you are in the room, please fill out a speaker card and return it back to me. If you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen or next to your name. And if you're joining via phone, press *9 now. I don't have any cards for this item and I don't see anyone indicating interest on Zoom.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we can now open it up for EQC discussion. And if there's no discussion, we can go straight to a motion.
Motion to approve minutes, second.
Thank you. So motion from Commissioner McKenna, a second from Commissioner Kissel. Would you call for a vote, please, Ms. Launder?
Oh,
And state the motion.
We have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the April 7th, today's meeting.
Yeah, March
From the March
20. Yeah.
March 20th EQC meeting. We had Commissioner McKenna make the motion and could you refresh?
Kissel.
Kissel seconded. Thank you.
Want to call for a vote?
Yes, it's not in my notes exactly how to call for that. Could you provide
I think we can,
the sentence?
yes, which would be,
Just
let
a
us
roll call.
vote. All, yeah,
All
in favor.
Aye.
Aye, yeah.
Great,
Commission,
unanimous.
yeah, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along to item D2, which is reviewing and discussing the climate action plan strategy number 6 and receive recommendations from the climate adaptation subcommittee on the scope of work for 2025 to 2030. And I think we have 2 presentations, is that right? One from city staff and then one from the subcommittee.
Yes.
Okay,
that is
great.
Correct.
So it looks like we'll go staff first.
Yes, and management analyst Liz Tapia will be doing the presentation.
Can I just say a couple things before you dive in?
Absolutely.
It's just a reminder to the commission to let staff complete the presentation. There will be time for clarifying questions after that, public comment, and then discussion amongst the commission. Please proceed, Ms. Tapia.
Alrighty. So yeah, today we'll be reviewing climate action plan strategy number 6, to develop a climate adaptation plan to protect the community from sea level rise and flooding. So we'll review what a climate adaptation plan is, overview of our strategy, climate action plan and strategy goal number 6, our progress in Menlo Park, current policies and programs in place, and then we'll continue on to discussion. So climate action plan defined, the climate adaptation plan addresses the impacts of climate change on a specific community. It involves vulnerability assessments of climate related hazards like extreme heat and sea level rise. It outlines specific actions, policies, and projects that reduce the identified vulnerabilities. Integrates community engagement, actively involving local residents, stakeholders, and organizations in the decision-making process. Enhances resilience and safeguarding communities, infrastructure against the effects of climate change. And it's a living document. It's constantly updated, involving ongoing monitoring and evaluation, and updating for effectiveness and adaptability. In 2020, so our strategy, goal number 6, in 2021, the city council provided the following direction on the scope of work for this goal. Updating the safety element in Menlo Park's general plan to bring it into compliance with Senate Bill 379, climate adaptation and resiliency. Continuing progress on Menlo Park Safer Bay grant application, continue to participate in and monitor One Shoreline, and hold a city council study session in July 2021 on the city's local hazard mitigation plan. So CAP strategy number 6, this goal was set because Menlo Park's location of the location on the shore of the San Francisco Bay places approximately 1.3 billion of property in our Bellhaven neighborhood at risk of flooding from climate change by or as early as 2070. So see the map there. So that shows. So our progress, city progress has been the city's annex to the San Mateo County Local Hazard Mitigation Plan was adopted by City Council in November 2021. Our safety element was updated in 2022, 2023 to incorporate the local hazard mitigation plan. And that does include a vulnerability assessment, resiliency goals and policies, and implementation actions. And then in May 2023, staff received a notice of award for the Menlo Park Safer Bay grant. So progress so far, staff has continued to monitor and engage with One Shoreline, including efforts to pursue options to advance shoreline protection in the remaining areas of Menlo Park shoreline, with focus on the north and west of Bedwell Bayfront Park, adjacent to Redwood City. Completion of construction of the Bayfront Canal and Atherton Canal flood protection project in 2022. Reviewed and comment on the draft sample of ordinances for One Shoreline released in April 2023 for sea level rise and stormwater considerations. Monitored One Shoreline board meeting activities and responded to San Mateo County Grand Jury report on sea level rise. And then our current city programs, addressing resiliency and include our local hazard mitigation plan, our safety element, cooling center procedures, power outage resource center procedure. It's also our environmental justice element and our urban forest management plan, which is in progress.
Thank you,
Uh-huh.
Tapia. Does it make sense to pause here and talk about that or hear the subcommittee report and then talk about all of it?
We should hear the subcommittee report just based on how we have it structured in the agenda
Okay.
as one.
Great. So who is? Okay,
You are it.
great. Thank you, Vice Chair Schmidt, for taking us through the work of the subcommittee.
Absolutely. And so, even though Commissioner Lynn's not here, this was a longer term process between Commissioner Pellegrino and myself and Jeffrey. And we went about this in a bit of a unique way because with CAP 6, it had a real focus on sea level rise, which is one of the critical needs in the Bellhaven community. And I think that was the sort of foundational point. So the slide here, we used this in previous subcommittee recommendations. The baseline was to look at that and figure out where we wanted to go from there, or do we want to dive deeper on that one specific piece? And I have a habit of trying not to read everything on the slide. I think everybody's probably read it through, but the subcommittee really formed to look at what was going on in the city and looking at changes and enhancements that could make that more effective, make us, be able to move a little bit quicker over the next 5 years, and then include some specific strategies for different populations. And similar to what Liz presented, we were looking at different things like the urban forest management plan that's emerging, stormwater and water quality, the environmental justice element. So we did a bit of research to kind of come to this recommendation. Liz, if you go to the next. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm clicking through.
Oh, okay, oh, sorry.
No, you're-
So as part of that research, by happy coincidence, we found a state developed action plan for extreme heat. And I won't bore you with the details, but it's typical big state document. I want to say it's 80 something pages. I can't remember now, 90 pages. 64. 64? Oh, there you go. But, and there was a lot of detail in there. Obviously, grab a copy if you're interested. But it was an eye-opening thing because they had structured the work under 4 really pretty cool pillars, right? This idea of taking all the different pieces that are in the state and they put them under 4 pillars, which felt really like kind of where we were with our work, because there's an EJ element, there's a hazard mitigation plan, there's a this plan and that plan, there's 16 capital improvement projects. We were kind of in the same bucket as the state. So we looked at this and said, those 4 pillars are a nice way to rally folks around things that are memorable, but structure our own work as well as we look at the next 5 years. The other thing as you go through, go back one, the other thing as you go through this is the plan contains a lot of actions and new actions recommended by the state. But one of the most important things that we thought would be true would be that if the state's organizing everything under categories, then the funding would start coming up. Right? So the idea was, okay, if we adopt these 4 categories, we're likely going to be eligible for the money that comes down the pipe under these 4 categories. And lo and behold, that started to prove true. There's an EPA grant of about $10 million due, signing up, we can sign up for come November. That's really structured around a lot of this. There's 2 state grants from I'm gonna mess this up. It's one adaptation planning grant and one extreme heat and community resilience program, all coming from the Office of Planning and Research, I think, at the state level, whatever Governor Newsom's strategy team is. So the money is starting to flow from all these departments following these 4 pillars. And that's just an important thing to remember, because that's a big part of the recommendation, is to align to those 4 pillars. So next slide. So what we did was, when we looked at this, we said, all right, let's try to align our goals and strategies for the next 5 years under these same pillars that the state has aligned to. But let's adapt it to climate change that's here now, not just sea level rise, but all the things we know that are impacting all of our communities, somewhat disproportionately in the Bellhaven community, but all of us. So storms, extreme heat, sea level rise, wildfires, it's all happening now, and I know I don't have to convince this group of that. So we took this set of 4 pillars, and then we applied all the climate change things that are happening now as we started to think about it. And so this, without going into all the detail, there's some actions that are built behind us that the city team can then work into the plan. But things like the vulnerability assessments, as Liz was saying, the volunteer and service opportunities, those kind of things can be built under the 4 pillars. And those pillars are really simple. To build public awareness and notification. So we need to make sure people are aware this stuff is happening, preferably before extreme heat event and all that. We can strengthen all that, basically. The second pillar that the state looked at was, how do we strengthen community services and response? So this idea of, we have volunteer organizations, we can collaborate across communities, we can integrate different plans as opposed to have 7 different plans. How do we really strengthen the services that are being provided to all of our communities? And then one I added in here, which I think is really important, is, community resilience centers, because I'm lucky enough to go to a lot of the meetings that Pam's at as well in Bellhaven, and that's huge. Being able to go to places when there's extreme heat or when there's an issue, we just don't have that capability like we need to. So strengthening community services and response is a big pillar. The third pillar is really just the resilience of our built environment. And so I think a lot of us in this room look at that kind of stuff. How do we improve our solutions for energy, transportation, infrastructure? Simple example is, how can we keep banging away at the fact that the power goes out every time a big storm comes through? What do we need to do to harden our built environment so that we can mitigate that as much as possible, or maybe be more resilient is probably a better word, right? And there are a lot of things underneath that that's more than a 5-year journey, but we'll look at it in a 5-year chunk. And then the environmental justice element is kind of, in my mind, folded underneath that. But again, leave it to staff to figure out where the individual pieces go, but hardening the built environment's a big piece of work. And then the last is really, for us tree lovers in the room, it's about urban forestry, it's about stormwater, it's about school partnerships and greening schoolyards. So nature, in most of these kind of plans, nature plays a role. And if you think about trees, not to get on my tree soapbox, but you think about trees, it's climate change, it's extreme heat, it's beautification, it's air quality, they have lots of benefits. So that's why nature-based solutions is an equal pillar to the other. Next slide. So this is where I promise not to go into a lot of detail, but definitely we can ask questions on this one as we go. What we tried to do was provide some forward-looking thinking so you can get a better sense of what this might look like as staff works on the actual action plan over the next 5 years. So things like the vulnerability assessments, CRC's already been working on those in the Bellhaven community. So let's adopt, we've been talking about this with Liz. Let's just adopt and adapt that and not redo it, right? Or let's, for example, volunteer and service opportunities, let's not create a brand new citywide program. Let's collect what's going on, let's collect what's going on today and identify those opportunities with local community partners. So a lot of this has very logical focus areas that we can kind of narrow things down, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be a 25-year plan, but we can definitely focus in on key areas. So maybe, Rachel, go to the next one and I'll call out one or two. A good example of this as well, two really interesting examples. Community collaboration, I think, is super important. We shouldn't do this alone. So it's this idea of finding a working group of leaders from the community across all of our different spaces, all of our different neighborhoods and make sure we're really doing this together. I think that's really important as a focus area. And then the second is just integrating all of our different plans. I think Liz showed a bunch of plans. That's really tough if we don't have a sort of a superstructure. So that's one that I think is gonna potentially fall under this pillar. Rachel, and then the next slide, I think this one's very logical, you know, hardening the infrastructure, policy and plan updates, making sure it includes the latest technology, the latest thinking. And then obviously, whatever we can do to fast forward the environmental justice element and pieces of that, that should definitely be part of some of this work as well. And then, the one I'll call out in here, I love all these, but I think the one in the middle is really interesting. We were just, we benefited from a couple of presentations from San Francisco Estuary Institute. And they are really focused on the research side of this, but the sea level rise is still in here. We're not saying we're gonna not do sea level rise. We're saying this is actually needing to be bigger because sea level rise isn't the only current problem that we have to adapt to. So if you think about this as adaptation and resilience, sea level rise is just one part, unfortunately, of the equation. So it is kind of captured in this last pillar here, and we've got a good partner who can help us with a lot of that. This is everybody's heard me get on the soapbox. We have a lot of good partners in the community. This should never be a city does it alone. So as we form this idea of a coalition, you know, the hope is that we can pull on everybody's expertise, and this affects all of us. So really the idea is just, and if I forgot anybody on here, it's really just about pulling together. So Rachel, next slide would be great. I also won't read this. I did just want to give a huge shout out to SFEI because of all the things I think that we probably didn't know a ton about. They're really focused on sea level and groundwater rise. I think as we look at this, we want to just make sure we stay close to the science on it. We stay close to all the grant opportunities, and just a huge shout out to, they made a series of recommendations that were very pragmatic. They're full of really qualified scientists. So this is much more of the, we're not giving up the sea level rise part of CAP 6, but we have great partners who can help us with that. So let's focus on other pieces as well. I think next, almost done, I promise. I think next slide. Oh, and then also just to show the point, not to bore you with all the capital improvement projects in the city, but this is what we sort of found out as we dug in, is there are lots of pieces that are happening sort of decentralized. So let's pull that a little bit more together and a little more integrated so that we can make sure capital improvement projects in the city are integrated, they're working under one framework. We can potentially find more money for them because they're going to be connected to this more integrated framework that aligns to the state. So it's not about changing these projects. It's about making sure that as the city tees up capital improvement projects that benefit adaptation and resilience, that it can be part of this bigger movement in motion that is CAP 6. I think, and then there's other ways, my favorite counting slide, there's lots of ways to count and measure. Apologies, the joke is I always love to talk about counting and measuring, so, but we don't have to create it from scratch. There's lots of groups and there's just tons of ways to measure out there. So the nice thing is we can pull dashboards, we can pull other indicators. So this was just, I can't resist talking about counting, but that just means to show that we're not starting from scratch. And then hopefully toward the end, the recommendations are pretty simple, actually. One is move the scope of CAP 6 beyond sea level rise, because that really doesn't meet the community need. You know, we've all experienced what's happening now. Nobody in the room is, you know, of the climate change is not happening stripe. You know, we all seen it, we've all experienced it. So I think it's time to make CAP 6, I think as we talked about it, it's time to make CAP 6 reflect what's really happening in the community. And then if we're gonna do that, it makes pretty practical sense to align to a state framework that already exists, that is, aside from how I did it today, that when you simplify it, it's fairly explainable. And the money flows through it. The money's already started to flow through these 4 pillars. And I would expect over the next 5 years, that's bound to continue. And then the EQC, I think we got the words wrong there. Anyway, staff will develop the plan, essentially. You know, what we're really asking everybody to vote on today is that we want to just change the scope. We want to align to the state plan. But Rachel and team will prioritize the strategies to fit in the 5-year framework. They'll make sure that they identify the partners. We don't have to do all that today. But the idea is because we shift, then that'll give enough direction to staff to go off and then create the plan itself. And then also align with other city departments, pursue the grants, all the things that happens when you have a good integrated plan. Okay, and mercifully, I think that is the last one. Yes. So,
Thank you.
there we go.
Thank you, Vice Chair Schmidt. Yeah, and
Thank you.
Commissioner Pelegrio part. and
Anything to add, by the
Commissioner
way? Sorry. No.
Jeff has brought this thing through. He has been doing it. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so now we can open it up for any clarifying questions from the commission. Any clarifying questions? All right, let's move to public comment. Ms. Laundrie, would you call for public comment?
Yes. If you're in the room and you'd like to make public comment, please grab a public speaker card at the table over there and bring it back to me. If you're joining via Zoom, please use the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen on the right-hand participant panel. And if you're joining via phone, press star 9 and we can unmute you. Please do that now as we open public comment. And I do have one public comment card in front of me. Are you looking for it? Maybe, oh, they might be under there.
I will be submitting.
Do you need a pen?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll have 2 public comments in the room. Liz, do you see any online? Okay, we can start with public comment number 1 from Pam D. Jones.
Pam Jones again, and I still live in Menlo Park. Yeah, I hope myself. Actually, I was just, I had to take a nap after I read this report, and I thought about how much work went into it. And how it is aligning with what's actually happened. And I wanted to bring up just a couple of more things that are going on. And that is when I looked at, it's a slide, what's page D2, 1.12. And in addition to what you listed, there's groundwater and sea level rise, and there's going to be more information gathered on that because we're noticing that there's some issues, but we don't know what they are. And that definitely is going to affect what we're doing with the urban forest master plan. So I think you'll see that it's something that's going to come out of what the BHCCCT is doing, because that's where all of this is resting. There's actually 2 separate but related vulnerability studies. One you already know about that CRC is working on. There's another study going on that is the local roadmap to community resilience, and training has started for that. And there's some other things going on. So there's a lot of pieces that we're going to need to be reaching out to your residents about. And so we're now trying to figure out how do we put all these things in a package. So when we go door knocking, that we have understandable information, because I need a diagram, excuse me, to understand all this. Additionally, for example, we have the work from Habitat for Humanity Rebuilding Together, which is going to help with home repair. Peninsula Clean Energy announced today that they've got something coming. And they'll be doing 2 seminars next month, I think it is. And that's programs for renters in the city. And I'm not sure I heard them say that at the last when they were presenting at the city council meeting. But that was really good to know. It's something, for example, that we will pass out to the community because tomorrow night, so we're meeting this, because over 50% of our residents in Middle Park as a whole are renters, and we always need to keep them at the high level. And to make sure we can figure out ways to make sure that the renters are benefiting from that. It's not gonna affect their rent, so they're actually saving money for the owner at the end of the day. So, okay, I said the two things, groundwater and sea, I said sea level, I said that one. Oh, and I believe the environmental justice element has been released. I think today or yesterday.
Yes, the draft is online.
Yeah, so that's really nice because we've been chomping at the bit to see what the city did with our recommendations and what we need to do from there. And that is, for me, it's a piece of where sometimes what is said is misinterpreted because there's not all of the understanding of all background information that those that are speaking or doing the work have. And so when it gets translated, sometimes it ends up being nothing like it was to begin with. And definitely not the intention. So it's one of the reasons why I know I like to, and that the CCCT, the three CCs, and then well, you know, everybody there is really looking at the documents to make sure it's doing what we said we wanted it to do, and then also looking at the measurements, those kind. And then the big one is the funding. And I know I'm about out of time. But along with that, when you think in terms of volunteers, you want to look at renaming them as paid volunteers because so many people work. So that's another, to me, that's another place for a grant. And I'll just leave it at that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
That
Thank
was
you.
exactly 3 minutes, and I don't know if you want to offer more time.
Do you need more time?
Was that 3 minutes?
It was exactly, yes.
That was very efficient.
Thank you.
We have another.
We do have public comment. Someone's in there. Brian Schmidt.
Yeah, hi, Brian Schmidt from Endless Park, and I want to echo Ms. Jones' comments about this is great thing to see. I'm glad subcommittee and EQC is addressing this. One minor comment on organizations that might be good to be part of this. There was a list of potential partners. I thought Red Cross might be a good partner to add to that. And then the CERT program as well as a way of creating community awareness and including climate-related issues as part of their general emergency response and the training that they do and are involved in with the community. And a lot of what this discussion seems to be having regarding moving beyond, including sea level rise, but moving beyond that has a lot to do with heat resilience, it seems to me. And that's where what I threw out for discussion by either subcommittee or EQC as a whole is how much does this integrate back into the rest of CAP? Because with building decarbonization, electrification, plus power, plus storage, plus microgrids, you can get resilience. So should that be part of this? Or do you want to keep that entirely separate from this? I'm not sure if it's possible to keep it separate from it. And it seems like it is a valuable way to be thinking about resilience. At the same time, we're thinking about everything else. I know one suggestion that has been made for the building decarbonization effort in Belhaven is to include a small battery and portable PV system, so there would be a resilience component to that that could help power a fan or just keep communications equipment working for folks. And if people don't need to evacuate right away, then that can definitely help on resilience, not even just for climate issues, but for an earthquake. If people have enough means to stay around, they can be very, very helpful. So this GAP 6 could also be integrated to broader resilience efforts. So great work and looking forward to seeing what's happening next. I'm excited to hear about the EJ element being done too. So, thank you.
So many things happening. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt. All right. Any other public comment?
We don't have any other public comment in the room. Is there any public comment online? Okay, we're good.
Okay,
Public comments closed.
thank you. So now we can open it for EQC discussion. And what I'd like to do here is, give each person in the room a chance to comment and then, I guess in light of, maybe if we could pull up the slide with the recommendation. In light of, are there any recommendation, additions, changes that we'd make to the recommendations that came forward from the subcommittee?
I'm sorry, it looks like my mouse is frozen there, but it's not showing that on my screen.
Okay, great.
Do you need
Thank
to
you
read it out
for,
loud, or-
no, I think that's fine. All right. And thank you all for doing so much work. The first, I guess I have a question. I really like the idea of aligning everything we're doing with something at a higher level. And I always appreciate the focus on how are we gonna get our hands on some money to support these initiatives. If the California initiative is around extreme heat, are there other initiatives at the state level that we might also want to tie in around sea level rise or groundwater changes, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, the EPA grant is more, I think what we learned through digging in was the extreme heat white paper was the entry point. And then you pull back and you look at the real focus is adaptation resilience as a whole.
Yeah,
So there's, yeah, so that was just the starting point to go, oh, we really should crack open the code and figure out, is this the direction that the state is heading? And then we didn't list it because it gets a little exhaustive, but yeah, there's grants for all four pieces. So for example, CAL FIRE grant for urban forest management
Yeah.
plan, you know, that is one part of this in a way. So I think the answer is, yeah, it all is gonna start to have some form of adaptation and resilience flavor to it, I think. Similar to, you know, when you see the grants, it always, there's a real focus on underserved communities as well. I think it's gonna start to feel that way for a lot of grants in adaptation.
cool. I'm looking at the cover page of the Protecting Californians from Extreme Heat, but the subtitle is A State Action Plan to Build Community Resilience.
Yeah,
And that
Yeah.
feels like it kind of makes sense regardless of what challenge we're talking about.
Yeah, that's where we started, and then we started talking about, oh, this could apply to storms, and this could apply to, you know, wildfires, and it could apply. We just didn't want to sort of make, well, there are a lot of documents that are beneath this, and I think Rachel and others can testify that there's a lot of detail that we didn't include in here that maps some of that stuff, so.
Thank you. I had just a couple of other things that we can move on to someone else. In terms of the organizations we may want to partner with, the Thrive Alliance is just another organization that seems like they're doing great work. And I was thinking about the recent work, well, not recent, but like in the last 20 years and that is going on to convert the salt ponds back to the original marsh situation. And I know there was a situation here, I think right by the Dumbarton Bridge that converted back to its original thing just in the last few months. And this may be more of a question for the city. I don't even know if the city is responsible for it or if it's another entity. But I would love us to think about that as part of the nature-based solutions. Converting where we can. Okay, those are my comments. This looks great. Any other comments?
I have a couple of questions. So clearly we want to get as much, you know, federal, state and county level financial support, but what I don't know is what Menlo Park budget allocation went to the plan. And if we're unsuccessful getting a lot of additional grants, do we know how we're going to allocate budget between sea level rise and some of these other categories of resilience?
I mean, we didn't do that kind of analysis and make a recommendation, but I would imagine that the staff would start to look at that, right? Depending on what's under the umbrella and not, that feels like one of the next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the projects around sea level rise with Safer Bay are well funded and ensuring we're protecting the bayfront from sea level rise. That effort's well underway with Public Works and has funding. As far as the other climate risks, we would have to evaluate, but as Jeff talked about in the presentation, we have a couple different funding streams like our capital improvement projects, so we're thinking about resiliency center and capital improvement, things we can change in our facilities to make them cooling centers. We'd probably have funding come from that, and that's a process where departments, make the request and it goes all the way up to city council. And then we have our, fiscal year budgeting cycle where we can also include special projects and one-time funding, depending if there's fund balances. But we'd have to investigate kind of maybe like a.
I'm wondering if the city is asking for recommendations from the QC on asset allocation from a limited pool of resources.
Not at this time.
Yeah, I'd almost think about this as like an organizing structure so that we could do a gap analysis. So like, hey, where are we well covered? Where are the gap? Because it's hard to do that now with everything so decentralized, even the money, the projects, because it exists in multiple departments. It was the same problem the state faced, I would imagine. Because it exists in so many places, it's really hard to evaluate where are we well covered, where are we not, when it comes to just the overall needs and the emerging needs of communities. So I think about this recommendation is, okay, we're suggesting a different organizing principle, and then a lot of what we're saying about which nonprofits to work with and where the money is and where we're strong comes sort of in that next round of implementation. But because the cap was really focused on only sea level rise, we're kind of tied to that for now, unless we adopt this kind of new organizing principle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you both for that clarification. Did you have
I
any
guess so
other?
so the other one, just kind of building on your point about a reclaiming wetland, because that is a big protective capability. Have we also looked at what we're doing with building codes? Because I know things like swales,
Mhm.
Can retain groundwater, prevent flooding and things like that. I just don't know whether that's made its way into our codes and permitting process.
Yeah.
If not, whether we need to include that.
Yeah, thank you.
I just.
I feel like we can make like a bunch of good
Yeah,
notes for like
right.
the next phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it
Awesome.
for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I guess I would just amplify the public comment on how this can, there's certain things that have co-benefits. So planting trees has many co-benefits of adaptation and mitigation, and upgrading our buildings with heat pump HVAC systems does the same thing. So not sure that it's something that we need to include in this plan, but I just think it's important to highlight that. And that it really does provide a lot of resiliency, especially when you think about the most vulnerable folks, elderly, et cetera, that need that cooling that comes with a heat pump HVAC system in the summer and during the heat waves. And I love the idea that, taking this beyond sea level rise, obviously there are other impacts of climate change that we have to adapt to. So I think that's really important. And then, in terms of the budgeting, the building decarbonization subcommittee recommended that the city or the finance committee look at priority-based budgeting. So I think that could apply in this situation as well. Climate action is a city priority, so let's align our budget accordingly. And I always feel like we should look at everything through the lens of climate change because it affects everything that we do and everything that we're going to deal with going forward. So prioritizing our budget in that way, I think, could help address a lot of issues that our city faces.
Thank you. Okay. Did either of you have anything to add?
Just commenting on your observation about energy and resilience. I think that we're going to see a lot of that moving forward. One of the things that I've been talking with Rachel and other people is about trying to understand what's already in our code and whether there's anything we can do on the REACH code. But even what's on the 2022 energy code, California energy code, there's a lot of stuff in there about that will help with resilience at the energy level.
Glad to hear that.
100%.
Okay.
One other quick thought as well. There's a lot of interest in this topic outside of the city. And I think this idea, I love the priority-based budgeting as well, because this idea that this is sort of one of those issues that affects everything else, I think is really a critical thought for a lot of cities around us. So there are some discussions happening about Menlo Park being an example for our cities in Santa Clara and our cities in San Mateo. And if that proves to be beneficial, then obviously, sorry, my nonprofit past is coalitions get bigger amounts of money as opposed to a city. So if we can think about this in the broader scheme of like, we can help other cities do this, and then we band together and we go after much larger grants. And it doesn't mean we get all of the $10 million, but given the way the city budget situation looks like, the more we can be an example and partner with other cities down the road, the larger amounts of money that will start to flow our way, I think. So it's something to think about, because we've got a stretch here where we're gonna need to probably supplement the city budget with a lot of that kind of work, so.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so given all of the comments, my attention is now turning to the recommendation. We can go with this as a motion, but I didn't know if there was anything we wanted to change. Then maybe linking back more specifically to, well, I don't know. I'm thinking about the rest of CAP, but CAP 6 is by its definition part of the climate action plan. So I don't know if anything else needs to be said there. But I guess I just want to open it up if there's any edits that anyone would want to make. And if not, we can do a motion in a second and move forward.
I move whether we approve the recommendations as stated on page D23.
Let me just share our motion so I don't have to fumble over. Yes. Okay, so we're making a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. McKenna?
Make it easy with listening to.
Yeah.
Should we move into voting?
Yeah, I guess,
Adaptation.
Thank you.
Just saying, I'm not the only one who does that every single time.
Spell check's a great tool.
It's amazing.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I just expect autocorrect to solve.
Except when you're at a whiteboard and probably.
Autocorrect is really complicated if you have what's going on.
Oh,
It gets all confused.
I can bring us to voting.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of wanting to see, are we all clear on what we're voting on?
Do you
Like
want me to copy over the,
I would feel better about that. Thank you.
oops. Oh,
Here.
Just pull it up. The recommendation, you can probably just
okay,
pull it up because the recommendation is like, it's sort of encapsulated.
yeah. So we had a motion from Kissel and a second from McKenna to adopt recommendations of the Climate Adaptation Ad Hoc Subcommittee on the 2025-2030 scope of work for the CAP strategy number 6, which includes moving CAP 6 beyond sea level rise and flooding, and developing our CAP 6 goal in alignment with the 4 goals from the state of California framework, including building public awareness and notification, strengthen community services and response, increase resilience of built environment, and utilize nature-based solutions.
Thank you. Yeah, let's move to a vote.
Okay, let us vote. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
should we get to disband the subcommittee?
Oh, yeah, that should be our next thing.
We should.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, yeah.
I love you, but.
I move to disband this ad hoc subcommittee.
I second the motion.
Okay, Kissel second, Headley first.
Okay, we have a motion from Chair Headley, seconded by Commissioner Kissel to disband the Climate Adaptation Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Is that the right motion?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Fantastic. We can move to vote. Okay, all in favor?
Right,
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes.
right. Nice work, team.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, D3. Here we get to receive recommendations from the permit streamlining ad hoc subcommittee that was formed last month and will be disbanded after we discuss today. I guess I just want to remind everyone what we're trying to do here. Looking back at our notes from last time, the purpose of this subcommittee is to define permit streamlining and to come back to us with some recommendations that, we can then bring to city staff. So with that in mind, I believe we have a presentation. Are you giving the presentation? Are you?
We're doing it together. And
Okay.
I think that I pick up the short straw, so I'm starting and then we'll go through it.
Did you want to start with this slide or with this slide?
Why don't we start with the one that you have?
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that one, yeah. So I believe that this was just the beginning of the of this subcommittee, which is a very short subcommittee. So this was the recommendation we had last time, and then there, as part of this recommendation, there was streamlining the permitting process. So I believe that Ori Paz asked about what did that mean? So that's what we're trying to do. And because we have only had 1 month, it's a bit, the content is here. We will need your advice at some point to decide exactly what is that recommendation, how it fits, but the materials here. So let's go to the next slide. So that's the ad hoc is Commissioner McKenna, Commissioner Lynn, this is his last meeting, and then myself, Commissioner Pellegrini. Okay, next. So we try to define the scope. Normally we would have more time to refine, make sure we're getting it right, but we believe that this is the scope of the subcommittee. So we're looking into permits and inspections. So we added a bit the inspection because they go hand in hand with permitting. It's about electrical electrification permits. We chose these 3 bullets. This is what we have been talking about. There are additional electrical permits, but we believe that these are the keys areas that we have been talking about. So it's appliances in general, heat pump, water heaters, whole house, HVACs, electrical stoves, dryers. A big emphasis on heat pump water heaters, and Commissioner McKenna is going to talk about that. And myself, I have a particular interest in energy, and it ties very well with the comments before about resilience on the energy side. So we'll talk briefly about solar panels and electrical storage. The stakeholders that we identified as part of, they are interested in what does it mean to streamline the process are the residents, mostly the property owners, but there might be also property managers involved. Contractors, which are interacting with the system, and the community development department of the city. So that's planning and building for permitting and inspecting. As far as the properties that we scheduled, it was a very quick pass on some of the properties that would be needed for such a interaction. Probably the most interesting parts are, well, it has to be discoverable. I mean, we we know that people nowadays interact with the internet, so you have to be able to find it through searches. That's pretty much a standard. Probably the most interesting thing that we found is that there are 3 different systems coming online at the same time. So there is the existing system, which is the Excella system, and then there is both Solar App and DigiPlan, I think it's called, coming online. So at least to some of us, this was a bit of a we didn't know about that. So I assume that the staff was aware about that one, but the 3 of them should interact well. Otherwise, it's going to be very complicated for everybody to track it. Looking briefly, it looks like both Solar App Plus, which is from NREL, it's a free product, and DigiPlan, which is from a for-profit company, they both interact with Excella. So we assume that the interaction is going to go through Excella. So both of them are going to interact, but so it would be interesting for everybody to understand how that's going to look like. I assume that there's going to be a future presentation on that. And then as far as interaction goes, nowadays we all interact with emails and multiple media, right? So text messages or rich messages, etc. Then we listed a bit of the questions that are involved in regarding an interaction with the permit is what needs to be done before filing. We heard multiple feedbacks in that direction, is that it's very important to know what needs to be done before investing time in creating a permit. What is needed to do to actually do the filing. Ideally, all of these things would be self-evident, but that's not a reality. I mean, it is a good reminder that we need to do that. As probably all of you, I have it at the other side as a property owner or, of tracking a permit, and I know how relevant it is to find out where is my permit? Is it going through? It has been stuck somewhere. Excella is actually not bad about that, but it's not straightforward. And then having an ETA. I mean, so those are properties about how soon is it going to happen, each one of the transitions, so getting notifications of changes, being able to interact with ideally a human to get help on interacting with the permit. And then as a general properties, we identified at the very least, it has to be predictable, so you know what is going to happen. And I believe at this point, filing permits for most of electrification is free. I believe that that's still the case. I don't know, is that true? And then the other big thing is we have to get ready for a significant increase in the volume. So both on the heat pumps, water heaters, et cetera, and also on the energy part, there's going to be big increases coming down the line. So that's that. And then I believe that John, Commissioner McKenna is going to take over from here. Yeah.
Yep, so thank you, Eduardo. So we just wanted to focus a little bit on the permitting process for water heaters. Again, you know, if the city were to adopt some sort of a building code that required, you know, upon a burnout, that gas water heater should be replaced with electric water heater. This would apply, and then also with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District rules, which will go into effect in 2027. You know, as Commissioner Pellegrini-Yopart mentioned, there will be a significant increase in the number of permits that people are going to be requesting. So again, yeah, water heaters are a key priority for electrification. The current situation is if you're replacing a gas water heater with another gas water heater or electric with electric, then it falls under the limited plan check, which basically means you don't have to make drawings. The city doesn't have to look at them and approve them before you actually do the work. So the desired situation would be that also applies to when you're replacing a gas water heater with an electric heat pump water heater in the same location, then that would be another situation that we would like to see fall under limited plan check. Having the city set, you know, metrics and goals for turnaround time on permitting, so that, you know, folks have expectations and understand what the time frame is for turnaround. And then think this is already the case, but in an emergency situation, when your water heater fails, you don't have to wait for a permit to, you can actually just do the work and then get the permit after the installation. And so, the next page, basically, the subcommittee just wanted to look at what other cities are doing, what other cities are considering, what programs community choice aggregators are proposing that cities entertain with their assistance. But a few of the key things are, first of all, making sure that the building staff is fully up to speed and trained on electric appliances. And in particular, when it comes to understanding load requirements, and a good understanding of the main panel, and knowing that there are, in most cases, ways that you can electrify, convert from gas to electric without having to upgrade your panel. And even having the staff, when someone does come in and say, we want to upgrade our panel, having the staff understand that that may not be necessary, and at least informing the applicant of that, and potentially saving the applicant money and time and preserving the grid for the rest of the neighborhood. That's one thing for the city to look at it as it relates to permit streamlining. Second thing is really making sure that the applicant understands upfront what is going to be required with the permit, so that there is a really clear understanding and less back and forth where something may have not been supplied in order to get the permit, and then the applicant has to go back and supply that, and just a lot of back and forth in time. So, and then also this idea of when it comes to inspections, sort of putting blinders on and focusing only on what the permit is pertaining to, and not so much other items that may be found in the building at the time of inspection. Another idea is to have the city implement or maybe do a pilot program for virtual inspections. So, as the case is now, you do the project and then you schedule an inspector to come to your home. The inspector has to drive to your home. Virtual inspections became necessary and more popular during COVID. People didn't want to be in a building with somebody else for safety reasons, health reasons. So this is something that other jurisdictions are doing. And it's been found that, the process can be accelerated up to 5 times by doing virtual inspections. And basically there's would be like a software program that goes with it, but the inspector wouldn't actually go to the home. Either the applicant, the property owner, the contractor would be at the building, and via Zoom or FaceTime would basically be the eyes for the inspector. So we think that could really streamline the process if the city were to consider those types of inspections. Another concept is, as the Building Decarbonization Subcommittee suggested previously, is to distribute pre-approved heat pump water heater permits. And that could then be another, pilot program where the city tests it out. And again, the concept is to send everybody a permit in the mail, whether they're planning to replace their water heater or not. And that permit, that pre-approved permit might have a QR code that sends the applicant to a website which clarifies exactly what is necessary for the permit to be final, basically. So it provides all the criteria and a clear outline of what's needed. And then once the project's complete, then the inspection happens. So that could streamline the process as well. Next page. So one other possible idea is certifying contractors. So potentially the city could look at contractors that do a lot of work in the city, that have good track records, that, never have issues with their permits or inspections, giving those contractors some pre-certification, pre-approval. And, you know, it wouldn't be that the jobs completed by those contractors are never inspected, but it would be more on a kind of random basis. So just to keep things honest and keep tabs on the work that those contractors are doing. So that could smooth things out. Another item that we discovered is the California State Licensing Board does allow plumbers with certain licenses to actually do electrical work that is incidental to a heat pump water heater installation. So just making sure that the city is aware of that and implements or allows for that type of work to happen. So you don't have two different inspectors potentially coming out for the same project. And then the last one is, you know, having these inspections done with blinders on so that people feel more comfortable that when they're doing a project that you know, previous work or other things may not be flagged, that the permit and the inspection focus just on the work that was permitted for. And that will give people comfort in going through the process of getting a permit, knowing that a, you know, potential can of worms won't get opened up in the process.
Oh, yeah. So, taking on the energy side, so PV stands for photovoltaic and ESS is for electrical storage systems. So essentially solar panels and batteries. And these two items are going to see a very big growth in our area. There's already a lot of energy generated and stored in our county, in our city in particular, but it's going to keep growing for multiple reasons. It saves money for the people that install photovoltaic and batteries. It helps the grid. PG&E keeps raising the rates, so it becomes even better to actually do these things. So there is a lot of activities that's happening here at the local side, because we have all this great information from the permits. You can actually do some data canvassing, and I found over 1,000 addresses in Menlo Park that have solar panels and don't have batteries, including mine and Commissioner McKenna's house. So these are things that as soon as, at least on my personal level, as soon as I can find a good loan, I'm going to install it because it pays off really, really fast. And it's good for grid and it's good for renewable energy. So we believe that there's going to be a big growth in this area. And the easier it is to do these things, the more likely is that property owners will do it. And it's also, hopefully, is going to be cheaper because the contractor will not have to charge us for the overhead of actually having to do these things. So there is legal mandates to do this thing from different requirements. SB 379 from 2 years ago was requiring the online permitting platform, which becomes Solar App Plus. And that covers both solar panels and storage up to a fairly large amount of power. So that again, I mean, it's probably all of our installations are covered by that. So following on the principle here of learning from our peers, looking at how it's done in other jurisdictions, and then also applying a bit of our personal experience on this, the interaction with the fire department is a key part on streamlining in the sense of making things easier. And in particular today, at least as I experienced it, I believe that's still the case in Menlo Park. We need inspection from both the city building department and the fire department, and it has to be in a particular order. You do it in the wrong order, you have to do 3 inspections. I know because that was what I went through. So that's expensive. I mean, that is just money that we pay, right? So one particular recommendation that we think it would be relatively easy to do, and it shouldn't imply having conversations, deep conversation with the fire department, is just remove the ordering so that 2 inspections, but they can be in any order. That would simplify things. Okay, next, this area is moving very fast. I did some polling and I called a number of different jurisdictions. And in some of them, they told me, oh, we just changed. We used to do it this way, we just changed. So what I had was here looking at different jurisdictions. Menlo Park, as you probably know, we are under the Menlo Fire Special District that covers Menlo Park, Atherton, East Palo Alto, and some portions of incorporated Menlo Park, San Mateo County, sorry. San Mateo County itself has its own jurisdiction. They required separate inspections by fire and building department. All the other ones that I have approached have moved away from that. So, sorry, from separate inspection, yeah. So they have, the trend seems to be to have the building inspector do the inspection, and if necessary, then they call into the fire inspection. So they are the specialized cases is like the majority of the batteries, for example, they are all following the same rule. I mean, because they are essentially 3 big manufacturers, right? So so anyhow, I think that the message here would be keep an eye on this thing because it keeps changing. And there is, because of the volume that's coming, it behooves us to actually learn from our peers. And then the 3 links at the bottom are just links into interesting work in this area. There is Solar App, there is a dashboard from the CEC, is the California Energy Commission, which is probably my favorite entity in the state. And then there is a lot of work on streamlining permitting and inspections from Empower. And then the observation is, if we're talking about streamlining, we have to measure it, right? So we need some metrics. This is just a list of potential metrics, number of permits application, time to reach key stages. In particular, Commissioner McKenna had mentioned the time it takes to actually issue a permit. Incomplete applications get dropped, not because, I mean, in many cases they are properly dropped, but it's just know what's going on. And then we were down as one idea is to have satisfaction surveys. I mean, because that's a bit more of a qualitative information, but you learn by talking to people what problems they encounter. And at the very least, the property owners and the contractors would be stakeholders. And now back to Commissioner McKenna.
Yeah, so just a summary of our subcommittee's recommendations. You know, again, these are strategies that we would suggest that the city consider. Some they may already be fully up to speed on. Others may give them ideas on things where they can make things smoother and quicker and less costly for all involved. So again, staff training, making sure there's clearly defined pre-application requirements, exploring the viability of virtual inspections, pilot program for pre-approved heat pump water heater permits, viability of this certified contractor concept, following the guidelines of the California State Licensing Board to allow plumbers to perform electrical work, and exploring the viability of directing inspectors to focus just on the electrification work. And that one, you know, there would have to be some sort of a legal opinion and protection for the city if they were to implement something like that. And maybe even with a few of these other recommendations, we'd want to make sure that the city's protected from liability if they were to actually implement some of these solutions. And then the last 2.
Yeah, and the last 2 are the ones that I just mentioned, is removing the sequencing between fire and building inspections so that they can be done in any particular order. And then staying abreast. In general, I think that learning from our peers and the changing landscape about how these things are done is key, because it keeps changing.
Okay, well, thank you both, and Commissioner Lynn as well, right?
Correct.
That was very thorough set of recommendations for us to consider. Are there any clarifying questions from the commission before we take public comment?
I have two, just make sure I picked up on the comment. I really love the blinders on and the virtual inspections, because I think it addresses comments we hear from different communities and neighborhoods and all that. But I wanted to make sure I tracked, is that a practice that is still ongoing and emerging more, or did it start to die away with the end of the pandemic?
You mean the virtual?
The blinders on and the virtual feel kind of connected, and
I think they're different.
well, they're different, I
They're-
understand, but like virtual would kind of lead to a blinders on
Right.
situation,
Well, yeah.
right? Because you're only focused on that thing, so.
But you can also do blinders in
Or
person.
separately,
right?
yeah. So I guess I'm curious, is that a real practice that's continuing and growing, or is it diminishing? And
Yeah.
we're talking about bringing it back to address like community concerns and stuff.
Is that a question for you all or for staff or?
I think you're
wanna-
thinking about the trend of like those cities that
I you
you
wasn't sure.
surveyed, or?
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't
Oh.
sure I heard the comment right, like it's growing and we're just gonna jump on the wave, or it's diminishing, but we're bringing it back.
I think it's more the latter.
Diminishing and bringing it back. Okay. Okay.
Although I believe that the blinders is something, I don't know where it has diminished. I think that's,
Yeah, I was speaking more of the virtual
Yeah.
inspections.
And then the second really quick question is, I hear comments from time to time about a concierge to help navigate a lot of this stuff as well. And does it feel like this would replace that idea of needing a concierge to navigate? Is that sort of part of the discussion that you guys
So
had?
I think one of the bullet points was a live help. Maybe
Yeah.
that's covered by the concierge, or concierge is covered by that one.
yeah, it probably would. I think that concierge, I mean, ideally, you don't need a concierge for these things because it should be fairly straightforward. I think concierge is more of, at least the way I would think about it is, I want to electrify, what do I do?
So it's bigger than just this piece.
Right, I think it's more focused on, okay, I need to go and get a permit. I want to get through a process.
Pure streamlining. Okay,
Right.
good. That helps.
Right, because I think
Okay.
the concierge that was talked about, say from the Bellhaven community, was to help them like navigate the process, which is maybe something that we talk about as part of the agreement we have with PCE, so they feel like they have a partner as they go through the whole
The bigger
journey.
journey. Okay, that's the clarification.
So here we should focus on the streamline.
This is purely process efficiency.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
perfect. Thank you.
Remembering our goal of defining permit streamlining.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
And what we have here is essentially like a lot of ideas on how to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other clarifying questions? Okay, let us move to public comment then. Is there any public comment?
I will make a call for it. If you are in person, there are public comment calls. Are they moving over there? And you can grab one and deliver it to me if you'd like to make a comment. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen or on the right of your screen next to your name. And if you are calling in, please press *9 now. And we'll take a moment for folks to share their interest in public comment. Need a pen?
I got it.
Okay, great. Are there any online? No, okay. And it looks like we have,
And mine would be Mr. Two, these two. The two members.
oh, I do see that.
We're on top of a,
Great. And would it be helpful if I put the timer up this time? We're good?
It's up to you.
Just type it, and I'll let you know. We can start with Pam Jones in the room.
Again, thank you. And this was part of the information that I was looking for when I talked about the recommendations to the city council from PC. Was having this piece of information. I think it is important to have in in this set, place where it says cost of plans if you need them. Because sometimes if you need to do extra things and you're prepared for them, it makes a huge difference on whether you can go forward. I mean, $500 is a lot of money for some people, you know, so that was one thing. The other thing is I was forced to look up, I'm like, what is PV and E? That's it. So the good news about that is because I plan on getting a battery with my solar panels, and no point having solar and not having a real battery. And CNET has recommended a new number one, I shall not use any names. And they happen to have the price there, it was only 10 grand, which compared to what.
That's a big reduction.
That, exactly, compared to what so I bookmarked the page and I'm gonna do some more research on that. Because that's a huge piece. So I was just really thrilled with that one, so I just want to pass that one on. And again, thank you for all your work, this is so exciting.
It is exciting. We're excited that you're excited, Pam. We're glad you're here.
Many people get excited about permit streamlining.
Right, okay. Do we have a second?
We do have a second. We have Brian Schmidt in the room and you can get started.
Thanks, Brian Schmidt from Inland Spark. Again, great work. I was thinking about, the blinders, inspection blinders. And, the way I've heard this phrase before is it'd be blinders except for life-threatening circumstances would be the issue. And then the question that comes to my mind is what constitutes a life-threatening circumstance? And I'll give a specific example of, ground fault circuit interrupters, which are now considered necessary. But any building, I'm not sure when the cutoff was, but probably 20, 25 years ago, any building built before that time that hasn't been upgraded, they won't have it. So they're only required in places where there's water, but if you have like if you have your hot water pump system in a laundry room that also has an open sink, I don't know if a GSCI would be required there. So it might be time to start thinking about drilling down to what does it actually mean to have that level of blinders. So that's just one example. I can think of maybe there are others as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is a concept I've been exploring a little bit is that resource conservation districts are unusual in that they are governmental agencies that can discuss confidentially with homeowners, landowners, I guess renters as well, about violations, legal violations that occur on their property. And they do not need to disclose that information. This was set up as a way for people to come to a government agency and say, hey, I've got this problem. It was originally set up like, say you had a pesticide dump on your backyard. Finally decided you want to do something about it. So that might be an interesting thing to intersect with the San Mateo County RCD or something. On that issue, but that's not a very well formed thought. So just wanted to add those to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. It's so lovely to have public comment.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking your time and coming and joining us and helping us make even better recommendations. All right, it's now time for, unless there's any other public comment.
There's none. We can close public.
Okay, great. So moving on, we can move on to EQC discussion. I guess I'd again like to hear from each of us. And I think I'd like to go first. I'm gonna go first because I'm the chair. So I was, because I think a lot about the agenda and like how we're gonna move through it in an efficient way. And I am so deeply appreciating like the details and like so many great ideas that are in this proposal that I think, Rachel and Liz can take back to like the building and planning departments and also consider yourselves. But I'm kind of zooming out in some ways, kind of like the presentation for D2, like what's the zoom out where we're actually defining permit streamlining. In my view, it's quite closely connected to the metrics you all had defined. And I think all of the recommendations you made it could fall under something that's like a high level, like if we were to give direction around permit streamlining has these 4 elements. A, B, C, D, and that all of the detailed recommendations could fall under those 4 buckets. So, I have a proposal for those 4 buckets. And I would love to hear what you all think if this kind of works, and also staff too. I want to hear, because I want to make sure whatever we come up with tonight actually will be supportive of what we're trying to do. The first thing I want to say is, as we think about permit streamlining, while the electrification piece is essential for our purposes of getting, to achieve our climate action plan, the same set of people, I believe, are approving permits for electrification as well as other things. I've recently had an experience with permitting not related to electrification, and I think we need to think about how to make it better all around, because the contractors, city staff, like everyone is suffering. So that would be my first recommendation, is it's for all permits. And then the 4 elements include one, clear and predictable process.
Mhm.
You all talked about predictable, but I like the clear too. And things like, okay, and then the second one is fast. Means to be fast. 3, it is a process that includes continuous improvement. And in my view, it would be like the ongoing surveys, not only of contractors and property owners, but also staff, because I think they're also suffering.
Mhm.
And they see a lot, so I would want to make sure that they have a chance to give feedback regularly as well. And then the 4th piece would have the blinders on, except for whatever term we want to use, except for the life-threatening circumstances, because I think we've heard that one so much in different circumstances, and it really is a barrier for some folks, wanting to proceed, and we essentially need to have the permits in order to get the money from all the rebates. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I think, like all the things you all recommended, like the virtual inspections, eliminating unnecessary steps, eliminating multiple kinds of inspections and sequencing could all fall under fast. And in terms of clear and predictable, all the communication around, letting homeowners and contractors know if things are amiss or what the status is, to me, that falls under clear and predictable. So that would be my recommendation, is that we define permit streamlining as something that is clear and predictable, fast, continuously improving, and has blinders on except for life-threatening circumstances. It feels like a motion, but I'll come back to that. We can discuss. And if you all like my ideas, we can go with it, or we can make it better. And I'm also curious how it feels to you all. Because I think,
Do any of the bullet points not fall into one of those 4 buckets? Like, does that bucket list cover everything?
The only slight mod I would maybe consider is initial and continuous improvements, because I think the guys recommended a series of initial improvements that we should talk a little bit more about, but then building on that each time, because the landscape will evolve.
exactly. I think it needs to be an ongoing thing, and always making it better, faster, cheaper, because we know that time is a huge barrier, and time equals money. And if money is a huge barrier for people, not only, the city is also paying the inspectors to go and do this. So it helps
Yeah.
the city save money,
Oh, yeah.
as well as homeowners who are doing the work. So all around, it's something that we really need to,
What was the word you
For,
used?
for me, a key part is,
initial and continuous.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
for me, a key part is trying to learn from other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Because, I've heard it multiple times saying, you guys do it differently than everybody else.
Same, yeah,
Fastest way to make improvement is just steal what somebody else did.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So would that be, if we did
So I don't know
initial
where
and
you put
continuous
it in there,
improvement?
somewhere.
And benchmarking or.
Yeah, I think we could add that,
Adopt best practices.
Yeah.
like track and adopt best practices.
Yeah.
Is that a new number 4?
It's kind of, in my mind, it's a sub bullet for number 3.
Yeah, it's a driver for how continuous improvement happens, right?
Yeah.
Is you go out and you just grab best practice and push it through.
Yeah.
We should call it adopt and go.
I'm trying to think through all the topics that we covered. Where would you put, having a single experience as opposed to a disconnected experience between solar app and Digit plan
Probably clear and predictable.
That's for me, yeah, clear and predictable.
Okay,
Maybe
So-
integrated too, is that?
yeah, something like that. So it's not just clear, but.
Clear,
it's
predictable, and integrated.
Yeah.
Seamless.
This is
Yeah.
certainly right.
I like that because that would also include, like I had this experience with the city approved it, but then the county came over and didn't approve it, so they had to do it again.
Yeah.
So clear, predictable, and seamless. All right, look, we're getting good. What other things might we need to include?
Well, I had a different question, not about that, but similar along those lines. With the current set of recommendations, was there any Pareto principle applied in the sense of like the 80-20 rule? Because when I've seen recommendations like
Yeah.
that, there might be 20% of the things that make it 80% more efficient or faster. And if not, I mean, it was a short amount of time that you had, so if it.
Yeah.
It'd be a recommendation if we.
Yeah,
had
so
more-
for example, Solar App.
Yeah.
Is a very interesting application in the sense that you don't submit plans. But you submit what equipment you're using. So as long as you go through one of the equipment that they already know about, so that's where you get the 90%. Right, so the large majority
Yeah,
is just click, 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 oh, we know about these things automatic, and then but if you don't fit on that one, now you have to go through the slow process.
I think, yeah, and just to clarify, I was thinking more about, there's a bunch of strategies listed here.
Oh,
If
these
you
are
had to
part.
pick 3 that would get you the furthest, the fastest, would you be able to define what those 3 are, or would that be something staff would need to dive into a little bit more? Because like you could say, training will get you 50% of the way there, and the pilot for it. So it's just, it might be hard for 10 things, whatever that is, 9 things. But if we had to pick like the top 3 and they get us the furthest, the fastest. That's all. Pareto principle is a good thing to like make it move quick.
Yeah, I just learned what the Pareto principle is, so.
So sorry, the 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
And I think that's a good way to look at it. Personally, I didn't look at it that way, but I think it's good that we do. And I like Chair Headley's thoughts on sort of the 4 pillars. I do think that, we're trying to achieve our CAP goals, and electrification is key to that. So I would like to see something in our recommendation about, I think, the staff training and, I think the avoiding unnecessary panel upgrades is really important. And both making sure that, again, the staff is educated on that concept, interprets the National Electrical Code in a way that they aren't requiring panel upgrades when it's not necessary. I think that will that initial education for staff, if they don't already have it, it will be beneficial in the long run, both to the staff and to the applicants who are going to potentially avoid that cost and that time. And ultimately to everybody by, preserving the grid for everybody to electrify. I would like to see something in our recommendation about that.
So it doesn't fit into one of, because I think what I'm hearing.
That's what, I don't know where it fits, but I want.
4 buckets, and under the buckets, you can have.
Yeah, in my
sub-bullets.
world, I just added it as a number 5, and then I merged 1 and 2, so it was clear, fast, predictable, and seamless.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, like that.
continuously, initial and continuously improving, blinders on, staff training.
Well,
Staff training is number 4, number 4.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily,
That's how I integrated what John just said, but I'm open to it.
I'm sorry, show it
You
again
want me to
because I.
share?
You want to share it?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
and just to be clear though, I wasn't actually saying like, hey, we should prioritize in the room. Like, I think, that could very well be like priority number 1, that's gonna get us the furthest, the fastest, but how do we capture this idea of if there are 9 recommendations, you can't do it all at once, it might take the staff
Yeah.
4 years to get it done, so how do we tell them? Sorry, not tell them, but how do we prioritize of all
I
this?
don't even, I guess the question I have is maybe for you, Rachel, do we want to prioritize the list or, because my understanding of our job today is to define permit streamlining.
Yeah.
And so if we can get that done and then send all of these great recommendations over as part of that package.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, but I don't know if you all feel
Yeah.
that as well, or if we need to get more clear.
Yeah, I
Rachel,
mean,
do you feel?
honestly, from my perspective, if we say there are going to be metrics and you're going to measure the metric, that would do a lot of this stuff.
Yes,
Well, and honestly, it sort of answered my question is, it sounds like there wasn't a prioritization, so that's cool.
Yeah.
That was really the only.
I don't think
question.
that's our,
Yeah, so
mandate.
then maybe it's up to staff to say, like, we feel like these three things are gonna have the biggest impact, so.
Yeah.
I don't even feel like we need to go much further, it's just,
Yeah.
if the guys had already prioritized, then great, but
Okay.
if not, then we know. It's not
Okay.
really important.
And I think prioritization happens not just with impact, but with kind of where resources are, where
Exactly.
capacity is with staff.
Yeah.
Where, what efforts they already have underway that they can easily build on. So I think community development would really appreciate the opportunity to prioritize within their own work plan.
I would think so too.
I mean, I think goes without, maybe it goes without saying, but I think that it is very important to encourage, everybody involved to actually request permits. Because for the rebates, it's only, the only way that we know some things have happened and you can only optimize, improve a process if you can measure what's going on. So everything that's happened without permit, we don't know that this actually has happened. So when we talk about how many heat pump water heaters there are.
Yeah.
That's our metric, right? So the simpler, there are many, many benefits of actually having a very good system that we can go in and ask questions and improve on.
One thing I'm seeing here, so can we have a comma after fast in number
Oh,
one?
thank you.
Yeah.
And then, I think your point, Eduardo, about the metrics, I want to make sure, like, under number two, not only are we tracking and monitoring best practices elsewhere, but we're tracking key metrics.
Yeah.
And I would actually put that as A and track, I would add the metrics as A. Yeah,
Maybe from right, different jurisdictions. Or peer jurisdictions or something like that.
and maybe even just to be more clear, I love that, track key metrics, maybe as B. If we could add another one. Let's see, the feedback. Solicit feedback
Mm,
from stakeholders.
Yep.
Like, as an
That was
example,
a-
PCE does that really well. Yeah, it's kind of on a schedule, like right after you get your heat pump water heater, they ask you about your experience. 6 months later, they say, do you like it? And they're tracking all that for their purposes of, selling the program elsewhere.
So this is permit applicants. And often the permit applicants are the contractor, not the,
Yeah, I would include the property owner, the contractor. And have a way for staff to give feedback as well.
And just to speak back to the training stuff, I do kind of love that it's number four now that I'm reading it again, because it's almost less about process efficiency is if there is one, sorry, super geeky, one ring to rule them all, like this feels like less a streamlining and more just like a basic requirement to make everything run and hum, and I'd almost elevate this beyond the other ones, if that makes sense, like we've done here. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I guess I don't agree.
You think training is one part of the process?
I think training needs, anytime we make a change to the permit process, staff needs to be trained.
But I think we're saying the same thing. Training rises above any process improvement.
But I guess it also follows the process, like the process needs to improve and then staff needs to be trained.
Yeah, totally
So-
agree. Yeah.
Agree, although I think that what John was mentioning was also about making sure that some nuances in the regulation are actually well understood, which I don't know whether staff already does, it may already do. But the other thing that came to me when I was thinking when you talk about training is this is a very fast moving space. So for example, sound from heat pump water heaters is changing very quickly, right? So what was true last year is might not be true today, but we're going to be different next year. So I think it's important for a staff to be given the time to actually learn about these things, because they are very, so giving them, I'm sure the staff wants to learn about all these things, but they have to be given the opportunity to learn.
How do you all feel with that language there that?
But maybe put ample and ongoing, because I think to your
Yeah,
point about
right.
it changing, like you don't want it to
Yeah.
happen every 4 years, you want it
Right.
to be.
Yeah, on it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'd like to, under the staff training, I really want to make sure that, one of the things we're talking about is electrification and the watt diet. And I don't know if the watt diet is the term we want to use, because some people may not know what that means. but-
Does that just to check that one, does that show in these permits? Do they actually go and check to see where you have the right panel?
Well, I believe when someone puts application in, then the staff will look at it and say, oh, you're gonna need to upgrade your panel. And so that's part of the process that we're trying to streamline and potentially eliminate that requirement of the applicant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know who does it. I mean, it seems to me that the contractor,
I mean, it happens
When-
at some
when-
point in the process.
yeah. I think it's a collaboration between the staff and the contractor.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
yeah, so I would even go further to say, like, if a contractor brings an application to the staff and it's saying we need to upgrade the panel
Yeah,
to 200 amps, that would be a point where the staff could say, actually, you don't have to do that. You know, you can interpret the electrical code this way, and you're gonna save money and you're gonna save time by not doing that. And ultimately, it's gonna make electrification easier for everybody.
Do you think that's a number 5 or a sub bullet of 4?
I was thinking a sub bullet 4.
What's the word? So I love that.
Experience.
Okay,
Okay.
can we open it up for a little public comment? Okay.
At your pleasure, you want to
Okay.
finish the spiel?
Yeah.
The party.
Okay, so we're gonna pause for public comment. Anyone in the room will address your public comment. If you're online and would like to make public comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And if you're on phone, press star 9 now, and we'll open up public comment. We have one public comment in the room.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. I've had some work done, and initially there was nothing about the box. All we did was add a room or extended a room. But ended up having to upgrade the box because there was something new in the city. This was a couple years ago. So you never know where that's gonna be. You know, there's other things other than electric, and I didn't have any electric, I had a mini split. Thank you, that's all.
Yeah, thank you. I think there were a couple of other.
No, you make this public comment.
Well, just to build on, this is the wrong language, but like something about and a deeper understanding of necessity. Because what I hear John say, or Mr. McKenna saying is, like, you want people who understand the nuance of, you really don't need to do that. And that's not just training, but that's an understanding and
yeah.
an application of your training, but I don't.
That seems to go back to your idea about the concierge.
Not necessarily, because the concierge, I think, is guiding people through
Yeah.
the process and they know how to make it fast. This is like staff. Yeah, it's domain expertise and they go, well, you could do that, but really you don't want to, you'd rather do this. And how do we capture that language?
I think Rachel's getting close and, okay,
But that's
your
really- but
comment
that's
is making
really-
me think,
That's really specific.
yeah, so we might edit a little bit, but I'm also thinking maybe there's, something about educating the contractors too, because what happens with staff, it's so far down the line. So we've got maybe the concierge, then you have the contractor doing the details. They're doing that based on what they think is gonna pass with the city. But if that whole set of people, except the homeowner really, is educated about this and can advise the homeowner and know that, have it be a predictable process, they know. They know either the city's gonna push back and say you have to have a bigger panel, or they know the city's gonna push back and say, keep your panel at 100 amps. But I feel like everybody in that chain needs to be educated.
Yeah. It's a good point. But predictable is different. Predictable is like every single time it's of X and Y, it's gonna be X, it's gonna be X, it's gonna be X. I
Right,
think what we're talking about is guiding people to the most efficient way to get things done so they
Yeah.
don't make a newbie mistake, right? Because
yeah, I think
that
there's
feels
both
very
as part of
possible.
predictable, because if the city comes back and is like, we really want you to do this other, they're gonna have to go back and do all this work, that's gonna be more expensive for everyone.
Okay,
So I do think training is a part of the whole process being predictable.
sure, yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah. All right, so Rachel, tell us what you have and let's look at it.
Okay, so I don't know if you want me to start with the motion piece or just what the definition of permit streamlining. Let's start with the definition.
Yeah.
So permit streamlining is clear, fast, predictable, and a seamless process. Initial and continuous improvement, tracking key metrics, monitoring best practices from different jurisdictions, soliciting feedback from stakeholders, including permit applicants, contractors, homeowners, and city staff. Permit streamlining is inspections done with blinders on, except for life safety issues.
We need to be more specific. We know in this room what we mean by blinders. Just from
Yes. Let's circle back to that one. And then permit streamlining is completed by staff with ample and ongoing training, including topics on load calculations related to panel upgrades.
So I might suggest then the point earlier about training, like domain expertise or technical training. as opposed to-
Yeah, the load calculations feels a little too specific. Well, example,
Ongoing technical training to reduce impact on the grid or something like that.
So question, we're going to submit these with the whole presentation also? Okay. So some of these details are in the presentation, so we don't have to
Yeah.
include them here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I tend to believe, I tend to think that some of these details might be too narrow.
Yeah.
And going
that's
to
a good
the
point.
motion, we would move to potentially adopt the recommendations of the permit streamlining ad hoc subcommittee. So taking all of the recommendations on that final slide along with these pillars.
well,
Yeah.
because this will be and the definition, isn't this the definition? So we'd say the recommendations and the definition.
Yeah, that makes sense. To
Hello?
adopt the definition and recommendations.
Yeah.
The definition of permit streamlining and recommendations of the permit streamlining ad hoc subcommittee.
Yeah.
Great.
I did, a couple we go back as well. I'm still a little. The word seamless. Isn't the same as centralized.
Or integrated.
Or integrated. So seamless just means it flows really quickly. But if it's decentralized, you're still having to deal with the county, the state, so. I would hate to lose this idea of everything being as much joined up as possible. Cause seamless just means there's no gap between step one, step two, step three. But if you got 15 different processes, then that's also a huge headache. So
Yeah,
I think we just might want to capture either integrated or centralized or some word that means one process instead of many.
yeah,
Well, so I guess I would, if, for example, the fire department needs to be involved, and I don't know what other agencies or groups need to be involved. It may not be possible to centralize that, but seamless means they are interconnected in a way so that the consumer has a single process. So that's what I meant when I said seamless.
I think interconnect is a good word too. I wouldn't necessarily feel like if we couldn't eliminate.
Yeah, I don't know that you can centralize. I mean, if you
Yeah.
can centralize, that's the best, but.
Interconnect was good too. It's the joining up of things to make sure that we have as few processes as we could have and have the debate with fire department. Maybe they'd be willing to give it up, but nobody's ever asked, right?
maybe.
Yeah.
In my mind, fast kind of captured all of that. So anything we can do to like eliminate steps, eliminate anything. So in my original recommendation, it didn't even include seamless.
Yeah, maybe we're getting semantics, but anyway.
But
So is the proposal to replace seamless with integrated?
I think seamless is okay as long as it means sort of interconnected. I still,
I'm fine with interconnected.
Why don't we put interconnected then?
Fine.
okay,
Interconnected,
okay,
sounds good.
great. Initial track key metrics, stakeholders, can you scroll down so we can see 3 and 4?
Of course.
Just active permit, oh, great, thank you for updating that. Active permit except for life and safety issues completed by staff with ample and ongoing technical training to reduce impact on grid.
Okay, sorry for Anna Payne, but that still doesn't capture the expertise element.
But they have ample and ongoing training,
Technical training.
Does it?
technical training.
Well, it's in technical in there. Does that feel like it captures the? Or is that just implied?
Implied.
Ample and ongoing implies like eventually you're gonna have some mastery, you're gonna have some expertise, and then they get advice. I mean, is it? Do we feel comfortable that that's implied?
I do.
See,
I'm happy with the writing, with the.
Does that number 4 get at what you all were?
I mean, I would suggest we just take the first bullet from the presentation under staff training and put that in there.
what does that say?
What does it say?
It's a staff training, electrification and walk diet.
Okay,
So,
No, it says, so ensure staff are sufficiently trained on electric appliances, including EV charging and installs, particularly on calculating load requirements.
oh,
Where is this?
Again, I know it's like, kind of like going back between what is just permit streamlining in general and what is permit streamlining as it relates to achieving our cap goals. And I want to just think about the importance of the latter in what we're recommending.
Oh, it might be earlier. This might be a summary. It might be earlier.
Yeah, it was on the slide number 6.
thank you. Right here.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I guess, the question I have is that part of the definition of permit streamlining? Or do we kind of high level it, like we want to make sure staff is trained and we send over to whoever's going to look at it in more detail, not only the summary slide, but all of the slides, because all of the slides have a lot of really important information.
Yeah, I mean, I personally prefer it. The more general description as opposed to the specific about. Load requirements, so for example, I mean, a structural attachment for batteries. I mean, one of the big issues with storage is, are the batteries too close to each other? That's not covered.
Right,
So
and to
I-
your point, things are going to be continually changing.
Yeah, they keep changing.
Yeah,
My only concern is that there was a situation recently where there was something being debated and people were against it, and the stuff that people were against ended up just getting put in an appendix that like nobody's gonna see. So I'm afraid that if we put kind of this electrification stuff as a add-on, like to another document, then to me, it doesn't get the amplification that it needs as it relates to our climate action plan.
so you want to leave staff training in and you'd like it to have some more detail.
Yes.
And I'm tending to agree with that as well, because I feel like if we don't put it in the macro
Mhm.
top 4, it just might get lost in the detail. And I think
Yeah.
training is one of those things that regardless of how we streamline the process, training is always gonna accelerate things. It's always gonna
Yeah.
help people make better decisions. So I strongly think training should be a big pillar.
Okay, and so John, your recommendation, was it both bullets here that
No,
you'd like to
just the
lift?
first
Just
one.
the first one,
Yeah,
lift
the first
that,
one
at that as it more detailed of number 4. Does that
Yeah.
work, Rachel?
would be like 4A.
Let me
Okay.
share what I have now.
Okay, great.
So in the notes, I just replaced for, permit streamlining is completed by staff who are sufficiently trained on electric appliances, including EV charging and installs, particularly on calculating load requirements.
That got it?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Can you make it smaller so we can see it all on one page?
Yes. The ongoing battle, with my
I know.
vision here.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It's only me? Okay.
Okay, great. And then maybe just scrolling up, just to be clear on what it is, like with the recommendations, to the point of things getting lost. So there is the page where there are the set of recommendations, the one page, but there's other information. So do we want to say, do we want to think about the recommendations as the whole set of recommendations from this group, not just the summary page?
Sorry, say it again.
You guys have the summary page.
Yeah.
But there's also a few other pages
Oh.
that have more detail. Which one do we want to say we're,
I would go with the summary page.
they do? Okay,
I
great.
mean, yeah,
I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
to your point about things getting lost in the appendix. Okay. Okay, well. Anybody want to make a motion on where we're at?
Back down, Rachel, sorry.
To the definition.
Yeah, yeah.
And, we wouldn't need to read the full definition as part of the motion.
Great.
And the motion I've typed here is just an idea. We could hear another motion as well.
What happened with, oh, okay, so you already removed the blenders up? Yeah. The blenders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is there, can you scroll down like one line or two lines? I think there's something on the next page, maybe.
Oh, thank you.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, let's
Okay.
hear it. I'm ready to take.
I move that we do this. Do we have a second?
Second,
Would you call for the vote?
Yes,
And
I was just making sure that, someone who's on the ad hoc subcommittee could be a part of the motion. I
okay,
think we're good.
Yeah.
Going back to the Brown Act training, okay, we can move to vote, all who are, in favor of this motion. Great, it doesn't look like anyone is abstaining or opposed. Okay, great, so moved, thank you.
okay, great. Nice work, everyone. Okay, and I have a second motion to disband the
Yes.
permit streamlining ad hoc subcommittee.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Crystal for a second.
Okay. And I will read the motion. Chair Headley moved to disband the permit streamline ad hoc subcommittee, seconded by Commissioner Kissel. All in favor? Okay, all opposed? Any abstaining? So moved. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
Finally got it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're now moving on to E, which is reports and announcements. I guess maybe I just have a few things to say. We had a very exciting week this last week.
Yes.
So we had the Love Our Earth Festival last Saturday.
Show up your t-shirt.
Oh, yes, this is the t-shirt. Love. So people walked away with t-shirts that were upcycled and screened with this lovely design from Lynn Dando. We also received the mayor's proclamation of Earth Day, but that was at the April 2nd city council meeting. And last Tuesday, 4 trees were planted at the Bellhaven Child Development Center in honor of both Arbor Day and the mayor's tree planting. So it just felt like very fun, sort of community building ceremonial honoring of the planet. And I don't know, I'm grateful for everyone who's been really involved in all of that. I know it's been a big lift on so many fronts these last few weeks. So thank you all for your commitment and your love of this planet and everything we're doing to support that. Are there any other updates from commissioners? And then we can go to staff. Yeah.
A couple of updates. One, so thanks to everyone who organized that event in East Palo Alto. The weather wasn't as cooperative as maybe we could have had it, but I think given the weather, we did get reasonable traction, and I was encouraged that, you know, some of us were in the booth for 350 Silicon Valley. And my observation was is an increasing desire for folks to address climate change and to change their personal situations, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. And so we really need to focus on communication and education, because people they're overwhelmed. And most importantly, I think they don't know who to trust. And so I think the city can really play a role in providing trusted advice to our citizens. So I would encourage us to continue to think about ways that we can do that. Second thing is, just on a personal note, I've been involved in an application for greenhouse gas reduction fund. And our coalition just received a $7 billion grant to pursue home electrification, EVs, and solar for low-income communities around the country.
That's huge.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Things are moving. Thank you. Any other updates from commissioners?
I don't want to follow that.
So, this next week, so tomorrow we have our dear CPUC friends are going to decide on community solar and income-based fixed charge. So tomorrow's a biggie. And then
So is this decision about whether to reverse the decision on community solar?
no, it's so complicated. So community solar has been approved by the legislature. We have a great legislature that does outstanding work, and then it gets bogged down at the CPUC level, in my personal opinion. So right now, the CPUC has this structure where there is an administrative law judge, something like that. And even though there are 22 states that support community solar, and none of them have got in trouble, the CPUC administrative law judge claims that the law that is, the proposal on the table is illegal. So there is this it's a biggie, because if CPUC claims it's illegal, then there are 22 states that are in trouble. So there's a proposal on the table. If that worked, then renters, I mean, your point, they would be able to get solar from a community solar developer that's delivering energy, and they get the same benefits that we all get from our solar panels.
It's huge.
And
Thank you
it
for
has
staying
been
on
an
top of
ongoing
it.
discussion.
And keeping us informed.
Yeah. So there is that, and then next week, the PCE is having the board of directors, and they are supposedly going to be looking at how to accomplish their goals of hourly match renewable energy. And that probably is going to involve, but my guess is going to involve a lot of distributed energy, because it's the only way to deal with the dark curve that happens between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. So it's a big 2 weeks.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. And Jeff, you had a couple of things?
Oh, yeah, but also echoing shout out to John and Lindan and the whole crew that put together the event on Saturday. That was amazing, third year in a row. I've heard lots of people comment and wish they could have done it as well, so shout out there. Also to the city, so the urban forest management plan, I can't remember if I mentioned this last time or not, but the CAL FIRE grants are there. The grant applications are open, which is fantastic. So it's 40 something days and counting to race to the deadline, but there's a lot of great work going on there. Multiple grants going in, great partnership with Canopy and SFVI and the city. And so it's exciting, because I think there's going to be a real hard push to work on the urban forest actively. Third quick thing is tomorrow, school board meeting in Menlo Park City School District for some of their initial work on the climate action stuff that they've been seeding, and John and I are part of some of that, but just to give everybody a heads up, you know, the bond for building electrification and a lot of other parts is being discussed right now, and that's sort of wave one of what Kristen and the team want to do. So I just encourage everybody to kind of keep an eye on that, because schools do lag behind a bit. And so anything we can do to kind of help them catch up to municipalities will be great. So tomorrow's board meeting, and then I think the bond potentially, if they go for it, will come on the next ballot. And then the last thing was at city council last night. Fantastic EQC members, all that great stuff. And then it started to creep into some of the budget discussion. So I think it's just always good to be aware of the potential challenges with the city's budget. Some are related to the state's budget and the overall economic environment, but we push forward a lot of really amazing things. And if, there's not the money to kind of get them going, then hopefully we can think about other ways to push that. So that's why CAL FIRE and EPA and all these other things are super important, because the budget's not as healthy as we might want it to be. So just stay tuned on that front as well, I think. So
Thanks,
that's
John.
it. Yeah.
John, do you have it?
Y'all just add to the gratitude for the Love Art Festival and everybody that was involved in putting it on, the city of Menlo Park, and Lori and Liz were integral in that. And I know Rachel joined the city late, but last year she was amazing in our events. And I'm sure she had some behind the scenes work this year that I don't even know about. Chair Headley was great with promotion and some really cool ideas that we incorporated into the event. Big thanks to East Palo Alto, to Actera, Cheryl Schaff, a community member, played a big role in putting the event on. And thanks to Mayor Taylor for being there and speaking. Thanks to everyone else that was there and participated. And to Menlo Park as well for their financial contributions and ideas and help in planning it all. So thanks to everyone that was involved in that. And I was just a very small part, but it was great to be part of a really exciting team that's kind of done it 3 years in a row now and already thinking about year 4.
Yeah, it's exciting. All right, any staff announcements?
Yeah, I will share an update. At the Love Our Earth Festival, we were able to launch 2 exciting programs for the community. The first one being the Zero Emission Landscaping Equipment Voucher Program that we're working with Actera on, and Liz will provide more of an update on that. And the second is we were able to soft launch our home electrification program for the Bellhaven community. We have a flyer and there's some at City Hall that you can grab. And right now the ask is that if folks are hearing about it or interested, there's a wait list form on PCE's website. They have, they've had that up since their last program cycle ended, and they're still maintaining it. And at the end of May, they're gonna reach out to all of those folks and start getting them scheduled for assessments and qualifying and all of that. And in the meantime, we're working diligently with PCE to get together our program guidelines and application materials. And I just want to extend gratitude to Pam for sharing your feedback at council, because that was the first time I got to kind of hear some of the community conversation around what the process is going to look like. What does eligibility look like? What does inspection mean? And working to provide those documents and offer those to council before our program launches as an informational item. So I appreciated you continuing the conversation. I know it's been a couple of years now, so we're excited to share that at Love Our Earth. And we can transition to the Zelly program.
Yeah, so really exciting. We launched on April 8th, and we had an update today that we are almost fully applied. So we have double check 28 residents who are approved and 7 businesses. So that leaves us with 15 more vouchers to be able to issue. So really exciting. Actera has been a really great partner with outreach, and they were there at the Love Our Earth Festival promoting. So were we. We've done a lot of outreach on social media and also in person at the on Sunday's farmers market. So it's been really exciting and great to see everybody on board. So yeah.
Now we're planning to go back to council in July to prepare an update.
Yeah, it's so exciting to see these things that have taken many years of work to get to a point where it's actually going out to the community and money is being spent and electrification is happening. And it's so fun to celebrate it. So thank you all for all of the work and staying with it over time so that we can be here. All right,
Thank you.
with that, let us adjourn the meeting. It's 8:14 PM. Have a great month. We'll see you in a few weeks.